It's one of the most meaningful and exciting day in the spiritual calendar. It's Leather Sunday. And as Reverend Pat mentioned, it's also Trans Remembrance Day, and we want to remember to protect our trans sibling. Leather. Leather has been with us since the earliest times. Our ancestors used animal hides and skins for clothing and for shelter. It was practical, it was durable, and life-sustaining. Even in scriptures, we find traces of leather. Jesus and his disciples likely wore simple tunics that would have been made out of linen or cotton with leather sandals. Leather was woven into daily life, and it was both ordinary and sacred. Across cultures, indigenous tribes used leather for ceremonial garments and embellished them with beads and feathers, connected the physical world to the spiritual. But let's fast forward to the late 40s and the early 50s. Leather took on a brand new meaning, and it was a rebellion. Shortly after World War II, gay motorcycle clubs began forming. Veterans, outsiders, dreamers, seeking freedom and brotherhood outside the walls of mainstream society. Leather biker jackets, pants, chaps, gloves, jaunty motorcycle caps, and boots became a symbol of rebellion and an unapologetic declaration of identity. Now, this bold, raw energy spread into heavy metal and punk, but its roots were right here in queer resilience, defiance, and self-expression. Spirituality, sexuality, and leather culture share deep roots and authenticity. They're about connection, body, soul, and spirit. It's about embracing the sacred that's inside of us and one another. At metropolitan community churches in the 70s and 80s, queer-affirming pastors began to say out loud what many of us already knew: that sexual expression and faith are not in conflict, that being true to your body and your desire is also an act of worship. Some of these MCC pastors also know that there were very developed leather communities within their congregations. There were also people of deep faith. Many of them had been rejected and marginalized from traditional churches. And they wanted to in many places the leather identity was not accepted, but here it was honored, woven into worship and community life. Leather Sunday became a time to celebrate this truth, that faith can be fierce, sexy, and free. More important, holiness isn't fragile. It can handle the weight of chains, the stomp of boots, and the fire of desire. Amen. When I first came to MCC, it was on Leather Sunday in 2000. So this is literally my 25th anniversary. And when I came here with my partner, Robert Cadalso, and it was very interesting. This was our first time here. And for me personally, I was very aware of the larger fight for gay rights. Gay people fighting for a place at the table and often fighting with each other. I was clearly aware that within this movement, there were people very active, engaged, and very sincere, but often white cis gay men that were struggling with the optics of inclusion. How to make room for leather folk, how to make room for the trans people and the drag queens. However, on that first Leather Sunday, I came in here and I saw Sylvia Rivera with her partner Julia. Now, we've got a lot of friends here. I've got friends in Boca and Fort Lauderdale, Father. So people that don't know who Sylvia Rivera was, she was an active member in this congregation She and other friends, Marsha P. Johnson, were the very vanguard of the contemporary gay rights movement. Sylvia and Marsha were on the front warring lines. We've got Sylvia's ashes with us here. And I'm just interjecting that, but back to my first experience here. I saw Sylvia Rivera with Julia, her partner. I saw Moshe Moses and Les LaRue and Margarita Denick. I also saw Danny Gonzalez and this very developed leather community. Danny teaching us what leather daddy realness is all about. And for me, these optics oddly were what my soul craved. So I'm grateful. I'm grateful to Reverend Pat. Thank you for giving me this opportunity to speak. But actually, I'm more grateful for her leadership, making this a sacred place of inclusion, humanity, love, and mercy. But back to what was happening 25 years ago in terms of gay legislation. The two best funded organizations at that time were HRC, the Human Rights Campaign, and the Empire State Pride Agenda. HRC was presenting something called ENDA, the Employment Non-Discrimination Act. Empire State Pride had SANDA, the Sexual Non-Discrimination Act. Both of these dealt with discrimination based on sexual orientation, and neither of them included gender identity. They were joined also by Congressman Barney Frank. And basically these organizations, what they were doing, frankly, is they were dealing in trans erasure. Many years later, Barney Frank would apologize and stuff like that. It's funny, this was in 2000. Sylvia passed away in 2002, and HRC never even happened to become an inclusive organization until 10 years later. And I don't think anybody apologized to Sylvia. But at the time, they were talking about gay legislation. They were hoping that to pass anything would be better than nothing. I can't help but wonder, and frankly, we will never know if more inclusive legislation would have passed. But I think that given the options, we should always lean toward justice. Mm-hmm. So meanwhile, in this congregation, Sylvia Rivera was here, and baby, she wasn't having it. No. At one point, one Sunday, she literally came up, chained herself, and locked it with a padlock to this pulpit and started screaming at us that you're going to have, essentially saying, that you're going to have your gay rights, but what about mine? And all I could do, I saw her do this, I could only think of Jesus. And when in the temple in Jerusalem, where he overturned the table of the money changers and threw the money changers and the merchants out. And it realized that it was time to resist the oppressors and the time to fight back. Saint Sylvia was not about to kneel to the false kings or bow down to the golden calf. She was going to make some commotion, she was going to carry on, and she was going to let them have it. That was the climate 20 years ago, or 25. Today we have the Supremes hearing issues of rejecting states' rights. Can you imagine? They always talk about states' rights, but they're considering banning the dangerous conversion therapy for children that is currently legal in many states. This week, although they declined to take the appeal from Kim Davis to overturn same-sex marriage, we've still got Justice Thomas making threats to do this. We have the militarization of our cities, unlawful act of ICE, and everyone blaming drag queens and trans people for everything. I don't get it. In the reading of the two scriptures today, in both from Malachi and Luke, we learn that both are apocalyptic and that both are about the end times and divine justice. Malachi foresees the day of the sovereign when evil will be burned away. In verse 20 it says, "But for you who fear my name, the Son of Justice will arise with healing in its wings, and you will go out leaping as calves from the stall." The word wings in the Hebrew can also mean rays, spreading light and warmth. Leaping like calves from the stalls has to do with the fact that the calves were kept in pens during the winter, and burst into the open in spring, filled with energy, symbolizing freedom, joy, and renewal. In Luke's Gospel, chapter 21, verses 5 through 19, this is about Jesus' prophetic teaching about the temple's destruction and the end times. In verse 7, the disciples ask him, when and where did it expect this? The disciples would probably have had to reread these words from when he first said it to them and after his death and resurrection. I'm sure that they would have assumed that speaking of the temple and its imminent fall. In verses 8 through 11, Jesus warns of false messiahs, earthquakes, famines, plagues, and other cosmic signs. Verses 12 to 19 explains that the disciples will be persecuted. They will face imprisonment and they will be put on trial. Jesus is admonishing them that before these traumatic events, they will be confronted and harassed. Yet these hardships will serve as moments to boldly bear witness of their faith. The key lesson here is don't be deceived, don't panic, don't give up. This is the time and opportunity for your voice to declare that the Creator is the very heartbeat of love. And it is not for a select few, but for everyone and everywhere. From Ukraine and Gaza to Sudan, Venezuela, and even Portland, Oregon. This love does not discriminate. It doesn't have caveats that would set conditions. It is boundless. It's not gloom and doom, but an opportunity to tell your story. And just one little story from me is that 3 years ago, I had lung cancer and I had surgery to correct it, and for the most part, the surgery was successful. Sadly, 2 hours after I was discharged, I was with my friend Oswaldo, who insisted on taking care of me. I mean, I craved my privacy. But what happened as a result of the surgery that was semi-successful is a blood clots went to my brain, and I had 3 strokes. Thank God Oswaldo was there. At the time, I did not know who I was. I did not know who he was. And I had lost the ability to speak. When I would open my mouth, it would make like barking sounds. And so for a time, that was it. Luckily, Oswaldo was able to rush me back to emergency, and they were able to move the blood clot, and I began a slow process of recovery, needing physical and speech therapy. Now, the speech therapist's first assignment for me was to do a report on fashion from either a newspaper or a magazine. It didn't really matter, and frankly, she wasn't interested in, I think, what I had to say. I had to record my voice or reading this report for 5 minutes, and she was there to clock my speech and see what we could correct. So anyway, I did my report from an article in the New York Times by Katie Weaver called, "What is Glitter?" My interest was both personal, primal, and anthropological. I desired to understand the human attraction to shine. But more important, I wanted to understand my own personal desire and addictions or anything sparkly, like sequins, flat, cupped, iridescent, matte shine, bugle beads, silver line, pave, that's my favorite. What about Swarovski crystals, plain or aurora borealis? And then there's fabrics, silk charmeuse, Duchess satin, metallic eyelash, and my favorite, lame. Now, the dictionary tells us that glitter is an intangible type of light. No, it actually says it's an intangible type of sparkly light. Excuse me. And by the way, when I talk about glitter here, it is really a metaphor for everything that is sparkly. But more about glitter. Glitter literally comes from glitter. And most of it comes from New Jersey. Who knew? 94% of it does. So, from a guy who had not been able to speak, there's one thing that I needed to do. There's one thing that I really wanted to be able to say. And that is, glitter is made of aluminum metallicized polyethylene terephthalate. Somebody say amen. So, much of this article was about studies in children. There was a scholar such as Vanessa Patrick from the University of Houston, and she found in her research that children who were presented with glossy versus matte shiny, the matte finished objects, they would lick the shiny ones. And they were examining if there's an evolutionary artifact rooted in primitive desire to seek out fresh water. In children, the preference of shiny over matte finishes appears to be innate. Now, the finest glitter is used in cosmetics, eyeshadow, lip gloss, even foundation. But let me tell you, glitter is everywhere. Glitter is made to use credit cards. It's in ski pants. Glitter is in our sidewalks. It's in our lumber. It's in stuffed animals. But what I want to share with, one of the things I'd like to share with you is that zookeepers will often mix glitter with the animal feed to track certain animals, such as polar bears or elephant. And that's so they are able to track them by their sparkling feces. One Sunday evening, Anderson Cooper was doing a piece on 60 Minutes, and he was going to be interviewing the CEO of Dominion Voting Machines. And I didn't want to miss a second of it. It was having to do with the lawsuit and the defamation with Rupert Murdoch and Fox and others. And to my great disappointment, the NFL game was still on. Now, I didn't want to miss a minute of Anderson, so I'm watching the game. And at one point, they did this close-up on the players, including one of them, and I suddenly saw their helmets and realized that they're made of glitter. And at that point, I realized that everybody loves glitter, even people that think they don't. In Matthew 5:16, it tells us to let your light so shine, be up for others that they may see the eternal, the Redeemer, and the love and the light that is in you. As we learned earlier when Jesus was exhorting the disciples, that although they may be harassed, imprisoned, and oppressed, that the good news was that there was an opportunity to bear witness of God's love and tell their story. And frankly, it is a time to resist. It's a time to fight back, and it's also time to sparkle. Mm-hmm. The glitter's main use is aesthetic. However, it is expanding. It is now being used in civil disobedience and social justice demonstrations. So glitter too is transitioning. According to Wikipedia, the first time that a glitter bomb was ever used was on May 17 in 2011. Newt Gingrich, who was Speaker of the House and legendary for his efforts to oppress queer people, was at a book signing in Minneapolis, Minnesota, with his wife Callista. a gay activist named Nick Espinosa stood up and shouted, "Stop the hate, Newt, and feel the rainbow." And he then proceeded to dump an entire box of glitter on Newt and Callisto. So today, as we celebrate Leather Sunday and Trans Remembrance Day, it's very important that you understand we're not celebrating subculture. We're celebrating survival, creativity, and sacred rebellion. Thank you.